Welcome into an all-new betting preview for this week's John Deere Classic. I'm Rick Gaiman, that right there. Andy Lack, and Andy, it might be Independence Day. Happy 4th. But we roll on and talk about the John Deere.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy 4th to everyone. Happy 4th to you. Any plans later this afternoon? Barbecuing, things of that nature?
Going to Armina's sister's house.
Okay.
And we will probably do a little pool day, a little barbecue, a little hang with the fam type deal. How about yourself?
I'm going to play golf with my girlfriend's dad for the first time solo. So it's probably normal to feel a little bit nervous about that, right?
Are you nervous about? Yeah, sure, of course. I mean,
well, we've never spent like 4 hours together alone. You know what I mean?
You know, it's not like you go out for lunch and you eat fast and you get it. Like, you're locked into at least 4 hours, whether it goes well or not.
Right. Exactly. No, but you know, we're in a beautiful place and he loves golf. Which, you know, so we get along great.
Are you gonna let him win, or are you gonna like take his money, or like how does that?
Well, I'm gonna, you know, that I gamble when I play golf. But I'm gonna let him take charge in terms of if there's any stakes, right? Like I'm not gonna step up to the first tee and be like, all right, pal, right? what's the bet? Right. I'm gonna take a back seat on those negotiations. But no, it should be fun. As you can see, I'm out here in the mountains. My first time in Sun Valley, Idaho, ever. Wonderful place, wonderful little ski town. Right down the road from Arnold Schwarzenegger's house. There's a big Austrian influence I've realized here, and yeah, it's a beautiful day to celebrate our great country and talk a little John Deere Classic.
All right, well, let's do that. Let's talk about the John Deere Classic. And here is the current odds board. This is on Odds Checker, so it aggregates the best odds you can get across a bunch of different books. So if you have the ability to shop, you should do so. And these names are not the usual names and numbers we've been seeing here, Andy. Denny McCarthy, Russell Henley, co-favorites, 16-1. Some places have Cam Young as a trio of co-favorites, but seeing here his best number available is 18-1. Those are the big three, but I'll even lump in the next two here. Ludwig at 25-1 and Adam Hadwin at 28. So you can at least, if you wanted to start your card with the favorite, it would be longer than most weeks in recent memory.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're just going to have to get used to this week seeing numbers next to names that you're not typically used to. Now, the conversation of, is this a good bet versus do I think this guy has a good chance? Probably a little bit different of a conversation, right? Like, I think it's hard to not just objectively like Denny McCarthy this week. He's playing great. This has been a career year for him. He's got 3 top 10s this year already in elevated events, including a playoff loss at the Memorial. He showed up in, you know, top 10 of the US Open last year, top 20 at the PGA Championship this year. So he's really doing it on the biggest stage. And you think, what better of an opportunity than a golf course like this where putting is extremely dependent. And he has a 6th place finish last year where he gained over 6.5 strokes putting. I still struggle with 14-1. And I think a lot of people are going to struggle with 14-1. And that is sort of how I feel about the top of the board is, do I love Denny McCarthy this week? Absolutely. Do I think that Denny McCarthy is double as likely to win than some of the guys in the 30s and 40s? That's where I have a little bit more of a difficult time.
Denny, and we've been tracking this for the last couple of weeks, has really broadened his pathway to the top of the leaderboard, which I like, right? He's no longer just dependent on the putter. I will tell you, I have not bet any of these guys, these first 5 guys. I think the ways to deploy them, Denny and Russell, I think if you want to fire them up in DFS contests, if you want to fire them up in one and dones, I think Cam Young is very, very live in some of the more game theory situations, Andy, whether that ends up being DFS or whether it ends up being one and done. Like, I think he's very live there. And then Ludwig, you can probably roll out in a bunch of other spots, but I don't think I'm going to be looking for the guy's first win at 25-1 when I'm pretty high on him, you know, winning a lot of places. So they're all decent. I think there's better ways to deploy them than the outright market. I started one tier down from here.
I agree. I did as well. Just one last thing on Cameron Young too. I think there is a compelling case for him this week. And this is a guy that still at the end of the day finished top 5 and contended at 50% of the majors in 2022. This year has been a down year for him, certainly, but you have to imagine that there's probably that extra motivation right now to get himself firmly back in the mix for the Ryder Cup. And I think most people would probably at this point logically have him on the outside looking in. I mean, why else would he be playing an event like the John Deere Classic? I don't know if he's in the field for the Scottish or not, but I would presume that maybe he is, considering a lot of the great players are using
Yeah,
that as a tune-up.
probably is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Cameron Young, like, he's finished top 5 at Detroit Golf Club. He's finished top 5 at St. Andrews, where he shot 17 under par, right? I think there are some very fair concerns about the putter, but if we're just talking a talent play, I think there's a compelling case for Young at 20, but I'm with you. I started in this next tier of, the guys like Shank and Griot and those guys and Smalley and the guys in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, I mean, the argument for Cam Young is he's probably the best player in this field, like longer term, right? If you showed
Right.
us, you showed us this field 3 months ago, he would be 8-1 to win this, and we'd be like, okay, he's gonna run roughshod through this field. So I think it's pretty compelling, but I did not get there. The next tier is where I did. So there's a bunch of guys in the 30s. This is kind of where they stuck everybody else. Adam Schenk, Emiliano Grillo, Taylor Moore, Eric Cole, Chris Kirk, Keith Mitchell, Steven Yeager is basically that group. I'll tell you, Andy, I've made 2 bets so far. The first one is here. It's Emiliano Grillo.
Yeah, I've made a bunch of bets in this range as well. I bet 3 guys. I bet Shank, I bet Smalley, and I bet Yeager. So I think this is a phenomenal range. And Shank is going to be a very popular bet this week. I've already seen him on a bunch of betting cards. I imagine that his ownership in DraftKings will be quite high. I think the number is starting to creep down. So on this wonderful Tuesday morning, I would probably act somewhat swiftly if you have some interest in him and haven't already. But this is a pretty straightforward bet, right? This is a guy that has a 4th and 6th at the John Deere Classic, has contended in multiple events this year, including Colonial, including the Valspar. Another great finish at the Rocket Mortgage last week, where he gained a ton ball striking and is just hitting the ball immaculately right now. So Schenk just makes a ton of sense from pretty much any angle that you want to run it through. And then you get to Smalley too, who's also hitting the ball great on approach right now. There's a guy I've been high on for quite some time. I believe that he is absolutely good enough to win on the PGA Tour, and that breakthrough is coming soon. What better than now in a much weaker field where he's absolutely, statistically, in my opinion, one of the 10 to 15 best players in the field. And then Yeager too, just another guy, played great last week, tends to do well on these bentgrass birdie fests, and coming in at a number that I think is relatively fair, considering he was 45-50 to 1 at the Rocket Mortgage last week, finishes 9th, and then now is 40 to 1 in a much weaker field.
Yeah, I've shown this a couple of times this week, or at least once this week, but the Yeager stuff is really interesting. I think I might add him to my card as well, because what you're getting out of him is a situation where he has kind of been unable to put all 4 rounds together. He'll play 3 really great rounds, and then he'll derail them generally on Sunday, but one time throughout the week. And the argument that I always like to make is it's a lot easier to clean up the one bad round than it is to try to go low 2 or 3 more times a week. So now, and maybe he snaps that Sunday issue that he's been having by tying the course record at Detroit Golf Club last week on Sunday. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good takeaways. I only have 2 guys on the card right now, so I'm plenty able to be adding to the Grillo list. So I think Yeager is certainly a guy that I might get to as well.
Real quick before we move a little bit farther down, do you have any strong opinions on Eric Cole this week, who I think will be another very, very popular options, but probably going to be on the outside looking in for me?
Yeah, so I really like Eric Cole. He's a great tee to green player. He's been hot with the putter. He plays a lot. He is a professional. I just think that he's probably going to be inside the top 20. But when I start looking at some of the other upside for these guys, he just doesn't end up making the card for me. I like Grillo because he's striking it beautifully, and since whenever he figured out the players with the putter, maybe he didn't, maybe he's running hot. He's like the 5th best putter in this field in the last 3 months. So I'm going to go there. There's just probably not enough bullets for me, but I do like Cole. I mean, it's a very, very good range.
I agree. And I think this is kind of the part of the odds board where you're going to find the winner. I mean, we didn't even mention guys like Chris Kirk and Keith Mitchell, even Nick Taylor, who I like a ton as well. But I think there's a lot more value here than there is at the top of the board. Even going down to Patrick Rogers is another name that I am quite fond of this week as well, because of his power off the tee and his expertise on bent grass greens. So I think this range of like 30 to 70, I've made 6 bets this week, and they're all, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 is basically what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I don't even know if there's a huge difference between some of these guys, right? Between
Agreed.
35 and 55. Like Doug Gim is playing well again. You can get him as long as 60. Ches Reavie played well last week that I wasn't particularly fond of for him. He's led the field in approach play. Now he's 66 to 1. Lucas Glover is the other one that I got already. Andy, I bet about 75 on Monday morning, just in case he continues gaining 5 strokes with the flat stick for this week at a golf course that he's played very well. So those are the 2 that I've done, but I will probably add, I wouldn't mind adding Jaeger to the mix. I would not mind adding Reavie to the mix. I think those are my logical next clicks.
I'm with you on Chaz. I've already bet Chaz. I love what he's doing with his irons right now. And then the only other guy in this range, my final bet of the week that I would throw into the mix is take a gander at what Ryan Palmer has quietly been doing from a ball striking perspective. I think he might be on the precipice of something fairly special right now in terms of, you see he's gained over 6 strokes ball striking in back-to-back starts. It's really just the putter that needs to be flipped, but he's had a lot of success in easier scoring conditions. He's had a lot of success previously on bent grass greens. So I think there's a lot of upside there with Ryan Palmer in terms of the way that he's hitting it right now.
Yeah, not only has he gained 6 strokes ball striking twice in a row, but he's done it in 3 out of his last 4, and he's done it in 4 of his last 8, and he hasn't lost ball striking in that stretch. So yeah, it's been quietly a very good run for Palmer. So I'll probably live in that 30 to 80 range. If I wanted to throw a couple bombs, I think there are some interesting options, but I do worry. Like I like a bounce back from Callum Tarrant. Can Callum Tarrant win? Debatable. Peter Quest, honestly, I mean, we have very limited data on Peter Quest. He's as short as 66, as long as 110. And the very small data that we have on him, he's like a ball striking fiend. Like, I don't know if these guys can actually win. We'll get to them in the matchup market here, but is there any bombs that you'd be willing to throw further down the board?
David Lipsky, Carson Young, both have my interest, but I'm with you. I mean, my card kind of ends in the 70 range with Reavie and Palmer. These are guys, like we said, that we can target a little bit more frequently in the matchup markets. I've never been a huge fan of Carson Young in the sense that I think that his ownership, for whatever reason, tends to get inflated from week to week, but I think the betting number is very fair on him right now. You see what he's doing on approach. Yeah. He has shown an ability that he's probably hitting the ball a lot better than his results would show. And that's probably why he's typically catching some steam in DraftKings, is because he's starting to show up in a lot of people's models, the people that are looking at data. So, I think Carson Young is a guy with some upside that you can still be early on and catch a pretty decent number. But I agree. I think our winner will be found this week, even on a week with a ton of variance where you kind of have to feel like a guy at 300 to 1 does have a chance this week. I think there's a lot of guys in the 30 to 60 range that are checking all the boxes and are playing great golf. And I think that's probably where we'll find our winner.
Agreed. And I like weeks like this because what ends up happening is if I do avoid the top of the board for my outright wagers, those are the very prominent matchups that you're going to be able to find everywhere, right? You're going to be able to find the top 5 or 6 guys in a lot of different matchups. So this is where, if you are a believer in Russell Henley, he's minus 120 to Cam Young. If you're a believer in Ludwig Aberg, he's minus 120 to Adam Hadwin. And then Denny McCarthy, Russell Henley, even money here. So this is also, by avoiding these guys in the outright market, I can take some stances here in the matchup market.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Griot earlier as a player you were very fond of from an outright perspective. I definitely like him in a matchup here over Taylor Moore, who I'm a bit down on this week.
See what Taylor Moore did last week.
Yeah, just 10 strokes putting?
I think it was almost 11, I think. No, yeah, it's 10, 9.95, 11.6 in the short game. Lost a little bit on approach. I love his game, but the last 4, even though he has a T4 in there, are not super compelling stat lines.
I'm with you. I'm happy to stick with Griot's ball striking. And then, a lot of these ones like Jaeger and Smalley, I'm going to stay away because I love both of those guys. But who's Patrick Rogers up against there?
Nick Taylor. Even
kind of like Nick Taylor too. Probably Ches over Taylor Montgomery.
Yeah, I mean,
is something I'd be interested in.
So bad.
Yeah.
Ravy minus 120 to Montgomery's plus 120.
I also like plus money, not to pick too much on Taylor Moore, but I also like plus money on Chris Kirk over Taylor Moore.
Doug Gim, even money to Sepp Straka is pretty interesting too. So
I'd take plus money on Ryan Palmer over Cage Lee, who's playing terrible as well right now too.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of guys to pick on here in this, especially in this field, in the matchup market. You can kind of get Dylan Wu and Gordon Sargent. Those are 2 very different golfers. That would be just
right.
fun to monitor. Okay, we'll continue this conversation. We've got a chat one and done. I will say, hat tip to you, Andy. You finally
Victory Monday.
You finally made up some grounds last week. We'll talk about that. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from Andy's podcast. Andy Lack is one of the nerdiest golf guys that I know, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. His knowledge of course architecture allows him to create some of the most actionable course previews available, and he offers up pure expertise on his own podcast, the Inside Golf Podcast. Twice a week, he offers course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategy for every PGA Tour event, and he expands the universe by bringing on entertaining and knowledgeable guests who can offer a different viewpoint of the game that we love. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts. And we're back looking quickly at the prop market. The props are not out on PrizePicks yet, but Andy, they do have the hot dog eating props for another 8 minutes. I guess there was a little bit of a delay, but for another 8 minutes, you can get Joey Chestnut over under 71.5 hot dogs eaten. Did you see that he's like minus 3,000 to win it?
Is he really? This is something you can miss me with. I've never been a big hot dog eating contest, competitive food eating. That's like, I love niche sports. It's a little too niche for me. Is that on today? Is that like a big 4th of July thing?
It was supposed to, yeah. So it's the 4th of July every year, and it was supposed to start at 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern, but I think they had a delay, weather related. So it looks like now they're starting at 12:30 Eastern.
A weather related delay in a hot dog eating contest. Where's this taking place? Is this in New York?
Island. Yeah, Coney Island.
Coney Island. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
The other thing is, low key, this is one of my favorite times. So we are kind of sport deprived in the summer, right. Which is why I love golf. But I love that Wimbledon is on just like all day long, right?
Yeah.
From 3 a.m. to 2 p.m. or whatever Pacific, there's something going on. So I will find myself like doing the props for those just to have something to be interested in.
Are you a big tennis guy?
No.
Yeah, I haven't been historically, but it's kind of growing on me. I bought the Federer book. I haven't started it yet, but I'm trying to get a little bit more into it. I think there's some interesting up and coming Americans that I want to monitor. I'm a big Taylor Fritz guy. It was my gateway drug was the Netflix show.
Yes, I do. I mean, there are so many good golf similarities that, like, I think if I did start diving into it, I'd really love it. And we're now going to be in the post Federer, Novak, Nadal era, which is going to open up a lot of things. Djokovic is his odds were 4-7. So he was a massive favorite to win Wimbledon, not his first match, not like to literally win the entire tournament before it started.
Yeah, and you come here for the tennis stats, so I'll give you this.
Yeah.
He's 36, so he would be the oldest Wimbledon winner ever if he was to win. So he would be making history this week. That's a little short for me. I like Taylor Fritz. He's my guy.
Taylor Fritz is currently 65-1.
Yeah. I think there's some value there.
Oh, a little value there. Okay. One and done. I was trying to put off giving the one and done results, but I think I've got to do it. So for you and I, congrats. You have made up $1.5 million. You had Ricky Fowler last week. You got the full winner's share. I had Tony Finau, who got me exactly $0. I knew that was coming. I was not high on him, but I said, like, and I did it in another one and done that I was front running. I was like, I just got to play the favorite. And I hate clicked it, and I knew that was going to happen.
Right. And I think a lot of people, because Fowler was popular, right? Fowler was, I would imagine,
5% owned or something.
Yeah, I would imagine it. So you really, well, I don't want to say you really fell back behind the 8 ball because it's not a big purse, right? Like this is the equivalent of getting a guy who finishes what, like 5th at a major, which is still great.
Yeah, maybe a little bit better than that, but like, yeah, like third or fourth or something like that. But yes.
Right. So beggars can't be choosers. I'm happy to get on the board. I did not want to be staring a winless one and done season in the face. Hopefully we can carry that momentum this week and keep chipping away. If I can gain like another like 800K on you this week or something like that, just get a top 5 and you get a 50th or a miscut or something like that. And I'm heading into the Open with 2 million and under. I'm starting to feel decent about my comeback prospects, but I'll let you go first.
Well, let me think about this. So if we look at the options for this week, I actually don't love weeks like this. I don't think they're super compelling because you just end up playing one of the favorites,
right?
That you have no reason to play anywhere, like just no reason to save. Just kind of discussion wise first. What would the scenario be for you to roll out Cam Young? Is that you're trying to make up ground and you're looking for some upside? Like, what's the scenario to you getting to Cam Young?
I would play Cam Young if I was leading, and I would play Cam Young if I was trailing. I mean, I think that he is, because Cam Young, I would imagine, is going to be lower owned than Henley and Denny, right?
Significantly.
Yeah. And I think that he is objectively, he's not playing like the best player in the field right now, but I think from a talent standpoint, he's right up there 1 and 2. Him and Ludwig are probably the most talented golfers in the field. So, right. Yeah, I mean, Denny at 25%.
Russell had 15, Schenk and Hadwin at 10 each, and then everybody else sub 7%. So Cam Young,
right.
4.5.
Right. So, like, I'd play Denny or Henley, me and you. But I would say that the best options, if we're talking value and one and done, especially if you're chasing, I'm looking at Cameron Young at 4.5%. I'm looking at Chris Kirk at 3.1. I'm looking at Keith Mitchell at 1.5. I don't think you need to get super cute with Ches Reavie at 70-1, right? But I think like that trio of Cameron Young and Chris Kirk, even Ludwig at 3%, he's the third favorite, right?
Yeah. So, Grillo's 6.6%, one of those guys. There's the thing. This isn't, I hate these weeks because they're not even super interesting. So for us, I've already used Cam Young, so I cannot use him. So I could just roll out at basically anybody else. Now I just have to decide who I want to hitch my wagon to. Is it Denny?
Right.
Is it Russell Henley? They're co-favorites, which means one of them will win and one of them will miss the cut, and I will probably have the wrong one. I will, or I could just go like talent and say, give me Ludwig, and I don't think I can do that for us. I'm gonna go. Give me Denny.
Okay.
I hate it, but give me Denny.
Yeah, I'll go Chris Kirk. I think he's going to have a good week. I really do.
Cam Young at Wells Fargo. I used him the first week of the year at the Tournament of Champions.
Yeah, T59 at Wells Fargo for me. Not exactly ideal. I've gotten, just real quick, just to show you how rough it's been for me with some of these great players. Spieth, T63 for me. Morikawa miscut. Zalatoris miscut. Justin Thomas, T60. Rory McIlroy miscut at the Masters. John Rahm, T51. Tony Finau, T45. So if you're getting miscuts and T50s from Spieth and Morikawa and Rory and Rahm, probably an indicator that your one and done season's not going too hot.
Yeah, you've gotten a combined from Zalatoris, Spieth, Morikawa, Thomas, McIlroy, Hovland, Rahm, and Finau, $218,000. Which is like less than, that's what Xander got alone at the PGA Championship. It's less than what Shane Lowry got at the Honda. It's what Sung Jae got at the match play. Like those 8 stars.
Yeah. Yeah. Scheffler 4th at least at the API. Yeah. But he finishes 4th every week. So yeah.
Yes. Everyone has gotten 4th place money from Scheffler.
Right. He hasn't, I don't think he's finished worse than 12th all season. So yeah, somehow, some way I'm in striking distance. What do they say about $3 million and one and done, the most dangerous lead in golf?
That's what they say. I've heard that plenty of times. That's right. All right, and enjoy the rest of your trip. Everybody have a great, happy, safe 4th. We will be back next week to do it all again. And then Thursday morning, this event kicks off. Andy Lack available on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been the betting preview for this week's John Deere Classic. Good luck.